Welcome to Uniquely Loved, a celebration of authenticity and divine inspiration. We are encouraged to be our own unique, authentic selves. Join me, Witch Niki, as we discuss spiritual gifts and skills we can develop and enhance, speak with amazing people using their skills in a variety of ways, and explore the different ways to connect to the wonders of the universe. Hello, loved ones. Today I have a special treat for you, as my special guest is my friend and mentor, Laurin Wittig. Laurin Wittig's passion is to help women recognize and unleash their innate and experiential wisdom, emotional, physical, and spiritual, so they can bring that wisdom consciously into their lives with confidence and joy. She accomplishes this through HeartLight Wellness, where she provides intuitive healing and spiritual mentoring, wise women's circles, and the Curiously Wise podcast. Laurin's novels are award-winning stories of women finding their wisdom and owning it too. Thank you for being here today, Laurin. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Nikki. I'm so excited to be here with you. I always love spending time with you. Can't wait to see where this conversation takes us.
Well, could you please go ahead and just give our listeners a little bit about how you got started?
Yeah, well, my journey to becoming who I am today has been long, many decades, but it really was triggered by health issues. And that got progressively worse until I was forced to look for more than Western medicine because that wasn't helping me. Mostly allergies, asthma, that I didn't realize I had asthma. And also I had a child that had some pretty serious asthma as an infant. And that also pushed me to sort of look into other things. And as I began to meet, first acupuncturist and herbalist, and then I met an intuitive healer, and the transformations that she particularly was able to create for me, with me, I should say, in just a few sessions, but they were over a couple of years. I was doing other work, but I actually walked away from my first appointment with her, which was over the phone because we live about 300 miles away from each other. And an hour after that, I did not have asthma again. And I have not ever had an asthma problem since.
Wow.
And that's been probably close to 10 years now.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And I was taking medication for it, but what she found was that my mother was sitting on my chest. So energetically, that's what was going on. So the medicine wasn't helping because it wasn't a physical issue. It was an emotional, spiritual issue. And she was able to help clear that. And a couple of years later, I went back to her after landing in the ICU overnight, getting allergy tests. I went back to her because I was afraid to go back to the allergist at that point. And in an hour at that point too, my allergies were released. And that's when I really learned a lot about the energetics of these things we carry around with us that we think are physical, and they feel physical and they manifest physically, but they're actually deep emotional and spiritual issues. For me, with the allergies, I learned that I was afraid of everything in this world. I didn't know that because I just walked through the world that way. But that healer was able to ask me what my beliefs were. I didn't know. She found them through the angels that she works with. She was given that information. And once she brought that piece of information into the light for me, my first reaction was, oh no, I'm not afraid. Whoa, wait. Yes, I am. I'm afraid of everything. It's like, it was a literal light bulb. It was like a light went on in my head and my heart that, that's truth. And then she helped me release it. And she gave me some tools to continue, because there's always a little cleanup afterwards. And that was when I really went, oh, this is what I want to do. This is my calling. I want to do this for other people. And yeah. And here I am, an intuitive energy healer, some 6 or 8 years later, and loving life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you have a really cool program, the Rapid Transformation Program. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. In fact, I had met Nikki just shortly before I launched this, and she was one of my first people to go through the program. So you can throw in your comments too. I realized through conversations with my guides, and I know if you follow or you work with Niki, that you hear a lot about guides. I am in close connection with mine as well. And I had heard for a while that, and this was during, I guess, during the pandemic or maybe just before, that time was speeding up, that change was speeding up, that the energies moving in us and through us were speeding up, and that this would facilitate creating transformation, that spiritual, energetic, and then also physical transformation more quickly than has been possible in the past. And so I was led, and I mean, it was definitely a channeled design for this program to create a combination of the intuitive healing that I already do, but to add a mentoring aspect to it, which I had done sort of on the fly during a healing session. I often will mentor and make suggestions and things, but this is a dedicated mentoring session, and I alternate them. And originally it was an 8-week program, and I have expanded that to 9 weeks because we needed a little more time for closure at the end of it. But it has created amazing transformation. And Niki is the prime example of where she was when I met her and where she was at the end of that program was pretty incredible. The thing I love about it, because I've had about a dozen people go through the program now as beta testers for me. And the thing I love about it is about week 5 or 6. So after 4 healing sessions, 4 mentoring sessions, it's that you get in the middle of that. So 2 of each of those. Everybody who has been through this has contacted me and said, I need to take a break for a week, because we do it every week. Something's going on. Things are shifting. I need time to process this. And without fail, there has been this massive epiphany, opening, releasing of all kinds of things, which then allows us in the second half of the program to really start to create the healing, now that you've released it, to give you tools about how to move into the world, to help you figure out what your passion is, and to help you move into what it is you're here to be and do. And Niki is like, a perfect example of that. And I have so much fun. It creates so much joy for me to do this program, because I get to be a facilitator in this transformation program. And for me to do the kind of work that I did with you in 8 weeks, it took closer to 8 years. So that's the rapid part of this. It really does allow for rapid change. And that's in large part because the energy and the time frame for us is just sped up so much in the last few years.
And of course, I got the full brunt of your experience and everything to benefit me and help aid me with my transformation.
Yeah.
Completely expanded my intuition, expanded my connection with my guides.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's like they were waiting for the door to open, and we opened it together, and then whew.
And you even got glimpses of past lives for me.
Yeah, one of the things that I do get, and when I do any sort of healing session, just whether it's part of this program or it's just a one-on-one, one at a time is what I should call it, session, which is traditionally how I've worked with clients. I'm moving more into this more intensive kind of work, but I do both. But a healing session with me is, I'm an intuitive. That's everything I come to it intuitively first, and then I'll go and learn about it more later. But because I'm intuitive, I use a lot of different things that I bring into my work. And one of my favorites is past life work. And I will be, just to give you an example for those listening, I have in my office, I have a massage table that's set up, and a client will lie down on that after we've had a little bit of a conversation about why they came to see me. And then I just kind of feel for what they need or where the issue is. And I feel into it. And sometimes I get past life information, especially if it's a really old thing that needs to be released. That's almost always in a past life. The things that we pick up in this life are much easier to release. They haven't been there for so long. They haven't, calcified within your system, within your energy. But so the past lives are fun. I always have fun with those because I'll get a picture in my head of like, looks like it's maybe medieval. I'm seeing like a field of grain, and I'm seeing, if I look down, I see this kind of clothing, and I don't often get super specific dates. I sometimes get a feel for maybe, I get a lot of stuff from Europe, from that area, which that's where we Americans started from. So it makes sense that we would be, not all of us Americans, I know that, but we're the white Americans, a lot of us started there. So it makes sense to me that that's where I have an affinity for, is those kinds of lifetimes. But the other thing that happens is I'll get a pain in my body in a place on your body that wants attention. Mm-hmm. And I did that just yesterday. I was working with somebody and I was like, oh gosh, I got that right in my left elbow. Oh, hang on, that's not mine. Let me go check and see what's going on in the elbow. And I use my hands like kind of like a radar dish, so I'm always like holding my hands over you if I'm working with you. But I also get song lyrics from songs that haven't been in my head for years, and they mean something to the person on the table. And I'll go, and I don't sing. I don't try to sing them, but I'll say, I've got this lyric that just showed up. This is it. And the person on the table inevitably goes, oh my God, I know exactly what that's about. Yeah. So I get visual, I get auditory, but I hear it in my head. Mm-hmm. The visual is in my head. It's not like I'm looking at a movie outside of me. It's an image in my head.
Okay.
I will hear things. I have had spirits, who have passed over from this lifetime come in. Mostly it seems to be grandmothers and moms, but I've had a few other interesting people arrive, and I don't know who they are when they come in, but I'll go, there's a spirit that just came in and standing next to you, and I see like this on it. And one of them is his nickname was Tex. So he came in and I could see it like a cowboy hat on him. And the person knew exactly who it was. It's like, so I get information in all these different ways. And then I have lots of different modalities that I can use to work on whatever it is. And I call myself kind of a jazz musician of healers, because a jazz musician has to really understand the basics of music to be able to riff and what do I want to say? What's the word? Improvise. That's the word. And so I have that same kind of knowledge in me. I've been a healer in many lifetimes. So I have a lot of stored knowledge, and I will just sort of, I call it feeling. I'll just listen internally to what I need to work on and how I need to work on it. So I know you've had a couple of people on who've talked a lot about Reiki, so I don't feel like I need to talk about that, but I do use Reiki. I love it. It's a beautiful, gentle, I like it as a baseline healing mode now, because I just kind of do that first, and it kind of clears out all the easy stuff and lets us get to the juicy stuff quicker. Yeah, it's juicy. I love it. I also use something called esoteric healing, which I'm still learning. It's a very complicated system that was channeled in by Dwakul, who I don't know who Dwakul was, but it works with the geometry of your body, and it's particularly the geometry of the energetic bodies. I'm learning about all the different layers of energetic bodies that we have. And it's really beautiful for working very specifically. So Reiki is a very general kind of work for me. Other people may use it differently, but for me, it's sort of a whole body flush of, bringing in beautiful energy and raising things up to where they can float away pretty easily. But then if I'm getting a particular, like there's a problem in your heart chakra, could be the physical heart, but usually I'm working with the energetics, so the heart chakra. Okay. And it might be related to, something in your brain. We have all of this endocrine system that we work with, like the pineal gland, or it may be related to your kidneys. And I actually create, and I know you can't see this, but I'm holding my hands up, and I create triangles out of these points of energy and help the energy to flow better between those points, which then brings balance back to the energy of those points in your body. And it's way simpler in practice than it is to explain, but it's a beautiful, very specific kind of modality that I'm still being trained in. I use it, but it's very complicated to learn. Easy to use, complicated to learn. I did learn early on, the very first system that I learned is called AccuNect, which was a wonderful system for me to start with, because it was, I want to call it a very masculine system in terms of it's very logical. You've got a very specific way of getting to information. And I learned a ton about the anatomy of the body, which is super helpful. But I don't use it anymore because that's not the way I work. I don't work in that kind of linear, logical kind of way. I'm intuitive, you know? So, and then the other one that I love, and this has more to do with the past life stuff too, is the shamanic practices. Mm-hmm. So I don't call myself a shaman because I haven't gone through that process, but I have learned to do shamanic journeying. Mm-hmm. And I love this. I was told in my first ever psychic reading that I had been a shaman in many lifetimes. And I believe it because it's come so naturally and so easily to me. And I have such a love for it. I don't use it a lot because most people are like, I don't know what that is, you know, but it's really a beautiful way to get, it's based on mythology and symbolism and a lot of symbolic language, whether that's visual, auditory, or whatever. There's a lot of symbolism in it. And for me, that's much more of a divine feminine sort of way of looking at information. Mm-hmm. So instead of hearing that you need to work on the heart and connect it to the kidney and, you know, this kind of thing, it's more of, I feel like there's something that we need to discover for you that we can't do in as deep a way as we could do it through a shamanic journey. Mm-hmm. And I think I've done a journey for you, haven't I?
In class, yes.
In class.
Because we did take a class together.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. We did take a shamanic journeying class together. Gosh, my the last couple of years with no time markers has been messed with my memory a lot. But that's right. We have done that, haven't we? So yeah, I love it.
Journey for a client. Mm-hmm. Really look like, or is it different every time?
The journey itself is different every time. I have power animals that I work with. I seem to collect them. I think I'm up to 5 now. In that class, I got introduced to 2 new ones. You know? So it depends on what the client needs to recover. Okay. That depends a lot on which of my power animals I work with, which of my teachers and guides I work with. Mm-hmm. There's what's called it's not alternate reality. What is it? I can't remember, but it's another dimension of reality, basically, that you get to through kind of like a trance. I don't really think of it as a trance, but that's probably what it looks like from the outside. Mm-hmm. I listen to drumming, which gets my brain sort of attuned to the level that I need to go to. Mm-hmm. It feels very dreamlike. And our dreams are very symbolic. So that makes sense too. And I know that I always have to, as soon as I get back, before I talk to the client about it, I have to make notes because, like a dream, it can disappear pretty quickly from my conscious memory. Mm-hmm. So if it's somebody here in Williamsburg where I live, that person could come and just be resting on my table while I do this. Mm-hmm. I usually do them from a distance. I do a lot of my work from a distance. It's been a joy to be able to do that in the last couple of years, particularly. But for that, I'll get on the phone with somebody and talk to them first. Mm-hmm. And let them know sort of what the process is and how it's going to go, and make sure that we understand why we're doing this. Because usually something's come up in a healing session, a regular healing session, that I get the information that we need to do one of these. So, and then when I start to go on the journey, we hang up the phone. Mm-hmm. And the person just gets to rest for 20 to 30 minutes, usually. Sometimes at least that, because it takes me a little while to write it down when I get back. Okay. And then when I'm done, I call them back and I tell them what I learned. And it's an incredibly deep form of healing. It's incredibly deep. And I think it's because it's so subconscious and it's so symbolic. And somebody was telling me, I think it was just yesterday, I was interviewing somebody for my podcast, and I asked her about her favorite mantra, and she rattled off this mantra that is from Buddhism, and it's not in English. And one of the interesting things she said is, and I'll connect this in just a second, is that she likes it in the other language because she doesn't know how to negate it. You know, when we affirm something, I feel beautiful most of the time, that kind of thing. Yep. She can't do that in that language. So it keeps it pure. And I think that's why the symbolism is so important in the shamanic work, because it's a symbol. It's not language that we can then twist.
Gotcha.
So I'm just putting that together here, but that's, I think that's why I like it. I've always been more about symbols than words, even though I'm a novelist. I like the symbols, and then I'll figure out the words to describe them. So yeah. So that's how a shamanic journey would work with me. Awesome. Other people do it a little differently, but yeah, I love doing those too. I really do. They're so powerful.
And I know when we were doing our sessions with symbolism, that brought back the memory of you releasing like a spider web or some kind of cord that was wrapped up in energetic cords into my shoulder. You had to cut the threads and pull it apart and everything.
Right. And I think that's, because I love symbols, I think that's why I get so much of my information in symbolic or not, this is what I'm hearing or what I know kind of thing. It's more intuitive. It's more right brained. Yeah, more right brained. Let's get those backwards. The more symbolic language is in our right brain, and the verbal linear language is in our left brain. So it's just, it makes sense to me that it's more powerful because you can't twist it. You just know what you're feeling from it. Yeah. So yeah. And the healing work I do is really all about feeling. It's not about thinking. We're not going to think ourselves out of these things we've got stuck in our body. So we try. Some of us try for a long time. I can just think it through.
Yep. I was one of those.
Yeah. And that's where the processing part is really important in healing work, because it's not good enough for me to find something and just release it for you. You have to participate in that process.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And because I'm not doing the work, I'm guiding the work. And I know I call myself a healer. I really am more of a guide, a healing guide, because you are the only one that can heal yourself, but you can't always do it alone. In fact, often you can't. If it's really emotional, spiritual stuff, you often can't do it on your own. You need somebody to help guide you through it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Okay. So you mentioned in-person and distance. Now, do you do distance with your energy healing and everything as well, not just the shamanic practices?
I do it with everything. I do in person if you live close enough to come here. And I love that. But I will be honest, when I work with somebody at a distance, I work around the same table that you would be lying on if you were here. I move around that table as if I was moving around you right there. And often at the end of a session, I can't really remember if you were here or not, because it's so real to me. I connect energetically with your body. And I know it sounds weird and like, how can that happen? A lot of people have trouble with that concept. And I'm not a physicist, and I don't ever plan on being a physicist. But I know that quantum mechanics, which is one of the newer areas of physics, is really beginning in scientific ways to explain things like why distance healing can work, why I can connect here in Williamsburg, Virginia on the East Coast to my daughter who lives in Washington State on the West Coast. And I do it all the time. I'm not sure if I hadn't experienced it firsthand so early in my process, if I would have been able to accept it as easily. But it was a no-brainer to me. By the time I got to where I was actually doing healing work, it was like, yeah, why wouldn't I be able to do that? And it has to do with the entanglement of energies, and that's string theory, and that's physics. And you can find stuff out there all about it that's probably very readable. I am reading a book right now called Why Woo Woo Works, and it's written by a PhD biochemist.
Ooh.
And it's fascinating. And I'm only about halfway through it. But so there's more and more scientists who are exploring why people like you and I can do what we do.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's lovely. It's great. So yeah. So distance healing is, I love working with people like Nikki at a distance because she feels it. She feels it in her body when I'm working on her. And it's lovely validation for me that I'm actually doing something. So I've, worked with enough people that I trust that on my end, I know something's happening. Mm-hmm. Most people, even if they're not as sensitive as Nikki is, will feel something. It might be a warmth or a tingling or a pressure or a coolness. And usually when I start working with somebody for the first time, I'll warn them. I'll say, you may not feel anything, or you may feel this kind of thing, or it could be more than that. Mm-hmm. And the thing, I think I did that intuitively, but I like doing it because it gets them to tune in. Oh, I might feel something. Well, let me let me pay attention, And I think almost everybody I've ever worked on, except a couple of guys, have felt something that validated it for them too, mm-hmm. which is really cool. So yeah, it's fascinating.
I think it's really weird when something's shifting and releasing when you burp or belch.
Yes.
Like, where did that come from? Oh, wait.
And that's another thing that I'm glad I had a teacher that taught me that, because yeah, when the person being worked on or the practitioner mm-hmm. yawns during a session, coughs, sneezes, I don't do that very often, thank goodness. Stomach gurgles,
yeah,
all of those kinds of things, burps, all of those things happen because energy is moving in your body, and as energy moves, it changes your physical state.
Yep.
And it changes your energetic state, and it changes your spiritual state. It actually raises your vibe, which is a very woo-woo term, but we are all energetic beings, which means we all have a frequency to us, because energy has a frequency.
Yes.
Like a sound, sound has a frequency, same impetus. And when you have this kind of work done, it actually raises your vibration. Now, I know when I started getting this kind of work, I would raise really high when I was with the practitioner, and then I would go down to whatever my baseline was at the time, which was pretty low. But over time, I learned how to maintain it, and now I get regular tune-ups, I call it, where my guides come in and say, okay, or I work with a healer for me, and it tunes me up a bit more, and it's easier to hold it now, because I'm used to doing that. So. Mm-hmm. But yeah, vibration is a really interesting thing. And it has to do with that distance healing stuff too. So
can you tell us a little bit about the Wise Woman circles?
Yeah, this is something that I started back in 2018. I literally opened my practice. I went professional in 2018, June of 2018, because my teacher kicked me out of the nest. She's like, you need to do this. Here's the office for you. I got somebody you can share the office with. I'll give you, I'll send people to you if I can't, it's like, sometimes I need a kick in the ass. So yeah.
All of us do.
Yes. So I opened my practice officially on June 1st of 2018. And I think it was just about 10 days later or 2 weeks later that I inaugurated what I call the Wise Women Circle. I didn't know a lot of people, because I had been a stay-at-home mom and I worked at home, and I never had a job outside this house while I've been living in Williamsburg. So I didn't have a big community, mm-hmm. but I did have my teacher and a couple of other people. And I said, invite people, just, anybody you think would be interested, invite them. And I think we had about a dozen people at that first session, which I thought was amazing. And I created it because I was yearning for really good, deep conversation with women. Mm-hmm. I was going through a time in my life. I was going through the menopause shift. I think I was, mostly in the menopause shift, but I was, my body was just wackadoodle, because it was like, I don't know what we're doing. And I mean, hot flashes and mood swings and all the, I had a terrible passage through menopause. I don't wish that on anybody. But I didn't have anybody to ask about it either. Mm-hmm. Because my own mother, who was still alive at the time, was deep into dementia. And she had had a full hysterectomy when she was in her 30s. And so she never really had to deal with, that aging menopause. She went right into it and went on estrogen. And that was, she never really talked about it. And my grandmother had passed, and I had never thought to ask any of the elders and elder women in my life, what do I need to expect coming ahead? So I thought, well, let's gather other women. Maybe they'll know. And it turned out to be this incredibly supportive community. I created it so that it was without judgment. It was a safe space to be exactly who we are. I was struggling with coming out of hiding as a healer and as a spiritual person. And so I needed a place to talk about that where I felt safe. And it just so happened there was a lot of other people that needed that kind of space too. And it was a wonderful community. And I say was because it's shut down during the pandemic. It did not translate to Zoom very well. But for 2 years, we were just celebrating our second anniversary, just not long after we went into shutdown, a couple of months later. For 2 years, we met twice a month. And we grew from that dozen. A few of those people didn't come back. It wasn't for them. That was fine. But by the time the pandemic hit, I had, I think, 40 people on my mailing list for that. And usually we'd have between 12 and 15 show up. And there was a time we had 25 show up, and I freaked out because that was way too many at once. And so the universe aligned to kind of say, okay, what's a good cap? But it was such a beautiful community. And I still am friends with so many of the people in it. We've kept up through the pandemic in other ways. And I'm getting a lot of messages now from the members going, when are you starting up the Wise Women Circle again? So I know it was meaningful and impactful. And because I talk to my guides, I keep going, so I need a location because our old location is no longer available to us. And I could have it in my house, but it's kind of hard to get into my neighborhood. It's a gated community, and it's kind of a hassle. So we could do it here. But I feel like there's some perfect place out there here in Williamsburg. And I just keep saying to my guides, let me know when and where we'll get this going again. And I keep getting, not yet. It's like, so I know we're going to reconstitute it. I did have a second circle I started at one point as well. It didn't, I had it in a different location, which is a lovely place for a yoga studio, but was not really the right place for the circle. And I think that had a lot to do with it. But I appreciate the free use of that space. A good friend of mine offered it to us. But I feel like there's a better space. There's another, space that's more conducive to what we're going to be doing. But it was a really good lesson for me too, because I have always avoided leadership. Always. Now, I'm in Aries. I don't really do astrology, but I've been told that Aries are like leaders. And I'm like, not me. And so it was really hard for me to do that circle. And I had a friend who helped me brainstorm it and came to the first session to be my moral support. But I really felt myself blossom into it. And I really loved it, but it was very female centric way of leading. It was not I am the boss and I'm going to, dictate how this works. Right. It was a collaborative community. I was like with the healing, I was the facilitator. I was the seed, but the community built itself around that seed or from that seed. And it's a remarkable community. And I know there's still a lot of friendships out of it that have blossomed, and people have grown into, new things that they do and new ways of being, and changed a lot in the last couple of years, as we all have. So I'm looking forward to bringing it back. And I have a lot more experience on Zoom now. You can imagine. And I've been a participant in a lot of group Zooms. So I have a better idea of how Zoom can facilitate that. So I am looking forward to creating an online version of it. Awesome. And again, I keep going to my guides. Now? No, not yet. Now? No, not yet. So
I'm getting soon.
Yeah.
And when you said not me for being the leader. I heard, yes,
Mhm.
you, come on.
Well, I mean, I am enjoying doing it my way.
And that's the best way to do it.
And that's the best way to do it. And that was a lesson that I needed. And it was a very safe space to learn it in, that leadership doesn't have to be corporate, you know. I love how the millennials are changing corporate cultures, because they're like, why were you doing it that way? That's so old fashioned. You know? So, embracing my own leadership style has been a big lesson of the last 4 or 5 years. And even during the pandemic, I hired an assistant. I've never had an employee before. And I've had to figure out how to be a good leader for her, so that she's, feeling comfortable doing what she needs to do and for me, and communication style and all of that. So yeah. So that's been a big thing. I also think that that's part of moving into my late 50s and 60s, has been a greater willingness to be uncomfortable, to stretch myself into that discomfort zone, even if it's just a little bit, even if it's a safe space to do it in. And now, like when I started my podcast, I was like 2 feet in. Okay, let's go. And I would not have done that a couple of years ago. I would have like lingered over it and tried to figure it all out before I started. And now I've definitely learned, just jump in, just get started, and it'll unfold and you'll figure it out.
And speaking of your podcast, Curious Wise,
yes.
how long have you been running, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, it is definitely the work of my heart now. I'm having so much fun with it. The name came to me in meditation from my guides, Curiously Wise. And I love the name because it doesn't lock me into anything. It's like yours. It's just an open, you can talk about anything and be curiously wise. I like to say I get to be curious, and we all get to be wiser by having the conversations and learning. I learn things from everybody I interview. And I mean, including my students, my mentees and clients here. And so it's really designed to explore the wisdom of women. I have one male guest on it so far, my son. One of my favorite episodes so far, he talked about game theory, which I know sounds weirdly unrelated to anything else, but our culture is being run on game theory.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just asked him to come in and talk to me. But I am meeting the most amazing women through this podcast, and I am creating consciously, as of the last week or so, I didn't realize this is what I was doing, but I am creating another kind of circle, another network of people, another community. And did you just get something? I saw you smile.
Chills.
Yeah. So it's a new circle. It is at this point not an official circle. Yeah. But Nikki is giggling. I know you can't see her, but
one of your guides, my guides, I'm not sure, just a guide. All I'm getting is this mental image of like a little kid doing the happy dance right now.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I got a download about how this is not just a network in a business sort of way, but is a community that I am seeding. And this apparently is part of my work, is to seed communities. And it's a little different than the Wise Women's Circle, because these are mostly people who have been practicing some spiritual path far longer than I have, which is why I love it so much, because I learn and learn and learn. But so this podcast has been a labor of love. It started, we launched it in April. It started last winter. And I was lucky enough to have a coach who really gave me the tools just before I knew I needed them, which was, thank you, universe. So I had a good idea, and I had actually guested on a couple of podcasts, because that's what she was teaching us to do as a way of building a network. And so, so we launched it in April. Niki was my very first guest. You can go and listen to episode 1 with Niki Jones. And we are now, I think next Tuesday, our 20th episode releases.
Awesome.
We have had such a great response to invitations to be on it that we are now scheduled for releases are scheduled into March of next year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's like, build it and they will come.
Mm-hmm.
And I do even have people now reaching out to me to ask to be on it, which is different. I've been having to go out and ask people. And so that tells me that I'm reaching some momentum, which is great. Every episode is a great conversation. I should say almost every episode is a great conversation. I'm doing a few solo episodes where I'm inspired with things, but mostly they are these amazing conversations with amazing women. I haven't interviewed any men except my son. And he's a very well-balanced guy. So I've also interviewed my daughter. I've been able to bring my daughter in as my audio engineer or my audio editor. It's her side gig. But I've always wanted to work with my children. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my wishes that's come true. And I have really enjoyed that. She's also been a guest on my podcast. And that's a gift. I have to say, being able to interview my children who are now 33 and almost 30 about things they're passionate about. Mm-hmm. I have never been such a proud mama. I mean, oh my God, they are articulate. I'm going to gush here for a minute about my kids. They are articulate and smart and well-informed and passionate. And I just love it. It's like, hey, I did a good job, but yes. They're just interesting people. So yeah. Okay. I'll stop gushing about my kids now. But this podcast is really opening up whole new areas for me. And that's, I have always loved technology. I've always been an early adopter with technology from before computers, but the micro computers, as we used to call them, really caught my attention when I was in grad school. And my husband and I married another early adopter. So we like technology, and technology has broadened the world so much. At the same time, it's made it smaller. It's broadened my world, but it's brought that world to me too. Yes. I've interviewed people from Australia, India, Canada. I don't think I have anybody in South America or Asia yet, but a lot on the West Coast. These are not people I ever would have met without this podcast. And now I feel like they're all friends, So yeah, it's wonderful. I definitely invite anybody who is willing to go try an episode out. I've gotten better as I've gotten more comfortable with it. So I think the interviews are a little more loose and free flowing as I've gotten gone. But I started off with Niki, and one of the blessings, and I thank you, Niki, for this, is that I knew you so well. I knew we'd have a great conversation, even if I was a spaz. Well,
you were not a spaz.
I was not a spaz. And we had a fabulous conversation. And it was such a lovely way to kick off. Again, this is me stretching my boundaries in a safe way. Yes. Because I knew you would be a forgiving guest. If it was a total disaster, I knew I would be able to go, can we try that again? So, yeah. So it's an experiment in a lot of different ways, and it's expanding my own comfort and consciousness and skills, a lot of skills, just by doing it. So, and I love to learn by doing. So that's my favorite way. So yeah, that's my podcast, Curiously Wise. New episode every Tuesday.
And you can find that any podcasting site.
Yeah, it's anywhere that you would go to podcasting, and it's also on my website. We also put every episode up on the website, and we have transcripts on the website as well. So cool. if you prefer to read, so yeah, check it out.
You talked about quite a few different ways that you receive information from your guides and from the universe. Well, your books. Do you feel like they were divinely inspired by your guides?
In hindsight, absolutely. I didn't know it at the time. I wrote my first book It came out in 2002. So I was writing it as we moved to Williamsburg. When we moved to Williamsburg, we moved 4 times in 13 months. Sold a house, rented an apartment, moved to Williamsburg, rented an apartment, moved into the house. Anyway, I was actually writing my first and my second book during that time. But my first book is about a healer who heals with energy through her hands.
And this is before you even discovered.
I had no idea. I hadn't worked with anybody. I had no idea. I had read about that kind of thing in fantasy and that kind of thing. I had no idea that I was writing about myself. I mean, not only that, she was escaping a dysfunctional family. She was afraid to show that she was a healer. She needed a guy who understood her, because I write romances set in medieval Scotland, by the way. I wrote my life basically, and didn't even realize it. So that was great. The second and third books were less channeled. They're more traditional romance stories without the magic in it. But then the last 3 that I wrote, the last one came out in 2015, is a trilogy. I was a big fantasy reader. I love a good trilogy. And I kind of went whole hog bringing the magical parts into it. So it is a romance, and it's got an overarching plot that's magic that goes, you have to read all 3 books to figure out how it all ends at the end, kind of thing. So, good fantasy style stuff. Each of those heroines has an awakening to her gifts in each of the books. So it's one at a time. They each get their own book. They each struggle with this awakening. They each have mentors and allies and teachers that help them along the way. And then they come into their powers, into their gifts, and it changes their lives for the better. And then, I won't give too much away, but then the 3 of them have to learn how to work together, because their gifts combined are far stronger than their gifts apart. And how lovely is that? When we talk about bringing community together, and I mean, and I knew that the third one was channeled, at least in part, because I wrote it in like 4.5, 5 months, which was super fast. Wow. But I didn't realize that the first 2 had been largely channeled. I was still writing with effort, at times, but mostly the story came through channeling, and then I fixed them up, I edited them, but I had no idea I was doing that. And the gifts that these heroines have are all gifts that I have in some form. I will say they are more dramatic in the books. They're far more dramatic in the books, but that's because, you got to have drama. But they're all based on things that I can do.
Did you know at the time?
I did not. I had no clue. In fact, when I just a couple of years ago, probably during the pandemic, because I got bored with things, I went back and read that trilogy. Didn't remember a lot of it, which is a clue that it was probably channeled. Because when I channel, I have to record it or something, or write it down, because I don't remember it otherwise. Not for long anyway. But reading them in hindsight, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it was the process was interesting too, if I could talk about that for a minute, because I had for years had a friend, a fellow writer here in Williamsburg, and we both had husbands that worked from home sometimes, and we both had a hard time with them interrupting us when we were writing. Because when you're writing, especially something big like a book, like a novel, you have to hold a lot of that in your head at once.
Yes.
There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things you have to remember, to make sure you connect all the threads. Well, she and I had met during a National Novel Writing Month gathering here in Williamsburg, which in hindsight, I think I had instigated. And most of them were William and Mary students, because it was held downtown. But she and I kind of connected, and we met, we continued to go to those meetups for that November. If you're not familiar with National Novel Writing Month, better known as NaNoWriMo, Look it up. It's a big deal. Every November, they have a challenge to write 25,000 words in a month. And it's excellent. But she and I yeah, it's very cool. She and I decided to continue meeting after that. And it took us a while to kind of formalize it. But we got to where about 3 or 4 days a week, we would meet in a coffee shop somewhere to write together. Now, she'd be on her computer, I'd be on my computer. We had rules. We got to say hello. If we hadn't seen each other in a while, we might give ourselves 10 minutes to catch up. Mm-hmm. Then we wrote for an hour. And then we would say, you going to be here tomorrow? Yeah. And, and moved on. We had a couple of other people kind of come and go over the years, but her name is Phyllis, and she and I have done that right up until the pandemic. So these books were channeled in the company of somebody that I've been writing with. Mm-hmm. Our energies are very attuned. We both slip into it so fast now when we work together. Mm-hmm. That I had primed the pump for the channeling. Mm-hmm. I was in a flow state. I was open to what was coming through. I didn't even know it, and yeah, so totally channeled. And I know so many people who are channeling books now that are nonfiction, mm-hmm. but I know so many that I think, like me, in hindsight, are like, oh yeah, that was channeled. It's like, mm-hmm. and they're always they're always really deep reads. They're good reads, but they've got a lot of layers to them, which mm-hmm. I love.
Yeah.
So
me too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool that you were writing literally about your growth as a healer and mentor and guide.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a part of me knew that I needed to go on that journey. And the conscious part of me was like, hell no. I remember when I was told that I had been a shaman before in other lives by the psychic that I saw. He told me that I could probably be a shaman in a year. I had just relaunched my book career. And through the ebook revolution, I'm like, I'm a writer. I don't have time for that. I can't be a shaman. That, it's like that's a full-time thing, right? So, guides, the universe will get the message to you one way or another. Oh, yeah. And for me, they let me model it through those books and see the happily ever after, because romances have to have a happily ever after. It's that primed the pump for me to go, that's really cool. I wish I could do that too. And then to bring people to me who would, show me that they could do it. And then finally somebody, taught me how to do it myself. Yeah. So it's, I can be very stubborn with spirit. I'm not anymore. I'm like, yeah, bring it on. But in the beginning, I was like, don't tell me what to do.
Well, a lot of people kind of come into everything with that mindset. And it's totally understandable. It's normal, but our guides reach out any way they can, as often as they can.
Yep.
Something will stick and be like, wait a minute, this makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I know. Or like, wow, that all those things lined up for this to happen so easily. It's like the spirit at work. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Do you have anything that your guides would like to go over or discuss?
Yeah, there's this topic that's been arising a lot in my meditations lately. I always journal after I meditate, but it's frequently a channel. And so a lot of it is coming up in there. And that is that the divine feminine energy is rising fast. And I didn't know what that meant for a while. It's a term I've used a long time without really knowing what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And I have learned, because I asked the universe, I need to understand divine feminine energy. Would you just bring whatever I need to me? I've had guests on the podcast and books and channelings. The divine feminine energy is that creative, nurturing, collaborating, co-creating energy, that compassion, mm-hmm. that ability to be peaceful, that ability to be empathetic, mm-hmm. all of those things that are considered very feminine by our culture and are not very appreciated, I want to say. So that is what the divine feminine is. It's that energy. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that everybody who all men and women, we all have divine feminine, divine masculine energy. It doesn't mean that to express your divine feminine energy has to be all of those things.
Right.
It might be one of them. You may be a particularly compassionate person.
Mm-hmm.
That's your expression of it. I'm a creative person. So it comes out in books, or it comes out in the stories I get from my clients.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a time where it's really rising fast. And they gave me 3 C's, which I love, and I made a note. Oh, they're there. So I would remember them. That are, I think these are seeds to plant within the divine feminine energy. These are things we need to bring together as women, particularly. Mm-hmm. Not that we need to shut men out, but women need to, I think we need to own it first. We need to bring it really strongly into ourselves. And one of the ways that we can do that is by connecting, collaborating, and creating. Those are the 3 C's I was given. So connecting, Niki and I are connecting with you all right now. This is a form of connection. It could be a hug. It could be a text to somebody going, hey, I'm thinking about you, or, let's get together. It could be connecting with yourself. And that's probably the biggest one.
Oh, yes.
So you can't see me, but I'm like pounding on my heart center when I say connecting with yourself. Getting to know your inner self is really important right now. Yes. Because our outer self is so confined by the culture. It's so confined by the masculine energy we've grown up in that it's harder to peel that away if you don't really know who you are and what's important to you inside. Mm-hmm. Oh, and so that, I think, is number 1, is that connecting with yourself, connecting with what gives you joy, connecting with what gives you sorrow. Sorrow teaches us. And once you get the lesson, you can let the sorrow go. Mm-hmm. So you need the wisdom, but not the pain. I say that to my clients all the time. You get to keep the wisdom, but get rid of the pain. So even those emotions that may be hard, or those memories that may crop up that are hard, first of all, there are people like me and Niki that can help you process it if you need help. But I'm not doing an ad. I'm just saying that there's lots of healers out there. Mm-hmm. But start there. And my way of doing that is sometimes I just sit with my hand on my heart, or on my heart center, right in the middle of my chest, because that connects me with the energy. Mm-hmm. But also begin to tune in and see, is there a funny song lyric that's coming through your head that you haven't thought of in years? That's one of those signs. Niki's talked a lot about signs. Mm-hmm. Was there an interesting bird that you've never seen before? Look it up. That's a sign. For me, sometimes I get an emotion. Like I'll get really sad out of the blue. And it's like, okay, what is that? And there's some old story that's stuck in my body that I'm ready to let go of. And that's the other thing I have to say, is that as a healer, then I'll come back to the C's. The only things that release are the things that you're ready to release. You may need some help with that last letting go, but nothing rises to the surface that you're not ready to look at. So just know that. Because I know I avoided going to healers for a long time because I didn't want to deal with any of that stuff. So connecting with yourself, connecting with others, especially women, mm-hmm. girls, young, the younger generations need wise women. So if you're like me and you're past menopause and you're moving into your 60s or beyond, we need your wisdom. Yes. Collaborate. So collaborating is just it's having fun doing stuff with other people. That's, at its base, that's the best kind of collaborating. Mm-hmm. I know that that I have a lot of collaboration projects that have been coming to me through spirit that I'm not ready to reveal yet. Mm-hmm. But the circles we talked about, that was a collaboration. I was the seed. Mm-hmm. You can be the seed, but I was able to collaborate with a lot of incredible women for mm-hmm. 2 years, and they still want more. So that's good. And then create. Don't get stuck in your head that creation is art and writing a book and, playing an instrument. No, creation is pretty much anything you do, mm-hmm. but try to do it with some joy. Discern what you want to do versus what you feel like you have to do or should. If you're using the word should, probably don't need to be doing that. So create joy is the main thing that I'm have coming in at the moment. And yeah, okay. Niki knows this. I just got covered in goosebumps. That's my truth bumps. Yeah, spirit going, yep, you got it. Create joy for yourself and then for others. But if you're not feeling joyful, you can't really create it for others. So the 3 C's: connect, collaborate, create. Mm-hmm. And this is how we begin to learn how to be with and in the divine feminine energy.
And anything we do that involves all that is designed to uplift yourself and others.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right.
Right. If it feels good, it's probably what you should be doing. Well, but what you are meant to do. I don't want to use the should word. Yeah, it's the things that bring me joy are my work now, which is great. Yes. Because then I get to spread joy to everybody I talk to and everybody I work with. So yeah, connect, collaborate, and create.
Excellent. I know self-acceptance is a huge part of the divine feminine as well. And,
yes.
When you first started talking about it, you asked about, can y'all help me with this? And I actually heard the words, you are it. You're embodying.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's so much of what I do. I already have. I just don't know it. Somebody's got to come knock me on the head and go, you got this already.
I know the terminology, but you already know you're doing it. Come on.
Right. Yeah. So that's the message I've been getting from my guides. And I know Niki referred to them as my all y'all, because I have so many guides now. I started with one and then I got another and then I got another. And sometimes guides will come and go. They'll come for a period of time. No, mine just stick around.
Mine do too.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You have a pantheon of guides.
Well, I'm completely omnitheist or omniism or however the heck you want to call it. And I'm open to all. And it's awesome because I fully believe that there's strength in diversity.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This has been fun.
It has been. Can you please tell everybody where we can find you?
Yes, the easiest place to find me is at my website, and that is heartlightjoy.com. Heart like your heart, light like you turn it on, joy.com. And I am on Instagram and Facebook. I'm also going to be on a new app called Wisdom. I've joined it. I'm on it, but I haven't been active on it yet. And it's a place where you can have conversations with people like me and Niki. Yes, I'm going to get you involved in that. Okay. That was designed for after podcast kinds of things. So we can have more of a conversation with the listeners. Cool. As well. And it's a wonderful platform. I just haven't been very active on it yet, but I am going to be there pretty regularly starting probably in October.
Well, I look forward to it.
Yeah. So, and the podcast, of course, Curiously Wise, anywhere you go for podcasts.
Well, you heard it, loved ones. Thank you so much for being with us today and explaining everything. I've absolutely enjoyed today. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been great.
All of you, just go to her website, check her out.
Oh, I forgot one thing. If I can add it real quick.
Yeah.
I have a free download, Laurin's top 3 ways to communicate with your guides, since we've been talking about that a lot. I'm going to send the link to Niki to put in the show notes. But if you go there and sign up for my newsletter, you can it's a PDF. It's basically a beginner's guide for how to communicate with guides.
Awesome. I will definitely include that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, this has been so great to just be in your energy again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, loved ones, for joining us today as we explore connecting, expanding, and transforming with Laurin Wittig. To find out more about her services, find her at heartlightjoy.com. Be sure to subscribe to this channel as well. More adventure awaits. Always remember, you are accepted. You are valid. You are loved.